How's it going, everyone? It is Anime Outlet, and this is part 5 of What If Deku Had a Chaos Quirk. Now, before we begin, I would just like to say I'm sorry for not uploading for so many days. I know in the last part I said I was finally ready to begin daily uploads once again, but then right after that, I had some stuff stuck in my throat and I couldn't really speak too well, so just talking for 20 minutes straight wasn't really going to pan out too well, so I had to take a little break. I'm sorry for that, but hopefully now I don't jinx myself and we can begin daily uploads once again. So now, let's begin. Right as midnight yells go, Izuku would push everyone in front of him backwards, jumping out in front of everybody, as he would sprint off into the distance. Some of the kids that weren't in the hero courses would stay down on the ground with dust covered all over their uniforms, just in shock, before getting up and chasing after Izuku, as many of them would start just being like, "What the hell, kid?" They would yell, some of them even picking up rocks on the ground, throwing it towards Izuku. By the time it even hit the ground, Izuku was long gone, far past everyone else, reaching it to the first event, or to the first obstacle, that is, where he would end up seeing a massive zero-pointer towering over him. As many of the kids in the general courses would end up arriving, some of them were kids that took the hero exam, so they would realize what this zero-pointer was. However, many of them wouldn't even know that there was going to be obstacles at all, merely thinking it was just going to be a race of stamina. So as all of them would stare up, looking towards this robot, Izuku would merely jump up with a tiny ball, flinging and just violently twisting in his fingers. As Izuku would then throw it out like a Pokeball, it would hit the robot right in the head before the robot would end up disintegrating into nothing. As Izuku would end up falling down to the ground, falling into a portal, as he would then appear just right back up, as he didn't want to get hurt falling all the way down to the ground and landing, as there was always a small chance of injury, no matter how good you were at landing from such high distances. Izuku, making it past the first event, would see the second event and would easily be able to hop across all of them with his superior strength, as finally he would make it to the last event, just the minefield, which he would simply put a force field around himself made of this similar chaos energy, as he would go around himself spinning in a ball rapidly, destroying everything and anything in its path. As Izuku would make it first, Midnight would end up yelling, "And Izuku Midoriya comes in first place!" She would yell, as everyone around them would end up cheering in excitement. As Izuku would end up smiling to himself like, "Yes, I won." Before going into the waiting room, where he would end up watching the rest of his classmates who were still only on the second event. That is just how far they were behind Izuku. As Izuku would end up just watching all of this happen, end up having more and more people come into the waiting room before the second event would end up beginning, this being the cavalry battle. Izuku would fly through the cavalry battle, as no one even wanted to be on his team, since he had the 10 million point headband. Everyone just saw it as a disadvantage to even go on Izuku's team. No matter how strong or fast you were, they didn't care. Izuku was going to just pull them down and possibly not get them to the second round. So they weren't going to have that and just weren't at all even going to be on his team. So Izuku, seeing this, would create the same kind of force field around himself, and no one would even get closer. However, this force field was weaker. Instead of being made of that same so destructive chaos energy, it would rather be made of just energy that would be more acidic, just burning when you would touch it, but it wouldn't completely disintegrate your entire body when it even made a single slight contact with it. So Izuku would win that and would end up going on to the third and final round, the 1v1 tournament. Izuku, being first in each round, would be called to go first in the 1v1 tournament's first round. There, he would end up going with the person that's happened to get fourth in the cavalry battle and last in the race. This would, of course, be Shinso. Izuku would walk up onto the just sort of arena type thing, staring on towards Shinso. As the match would begin, Izuku would stare on towards the purple-haired boy, sort of adding towards an effect. As he would be staring towards him, all of a sudden, Izuku would fall to the ground down to his knees. As Shinso would kind of look on, confused and shocked at the same time. "Oh," he would start, "are you so weak after getting those 2 first places? Have you really used up all of your energy?" Izuku would look towards Shinso, staring him right in his eyes. Izuku's head would wobble before he would collapse down into the ground. Right as Midnight was about to call the match, Izuku's body would sink into the floor. As he would be sinking, all of a sudden, a single hand would protrude right from the ground, pulling down on Shinso's leg, as Shinso would disappear into the ground as well. So all of a sudden, the two of them would explode out of the ground. Izuku, right in Shinso's face, would punch him across the face, as part of Shinso's tooth would chip, falling to the floor. Izuku would then jump closer towards Shinso, grabbing his head and slamming him to the floor. As blood would start draining out of Shinso's skull, Izuku would continue the barrage of punches onto him, not even using any powers of his quirk besides that one just disappearing move. As Shinso would end up lying on the ground, so slow and barely able to move, his shaky arm would raise a finger, signifying that he was dropping out of the fight. Midnight would call the fight then and there, saying Izuku Midori was the winner of the first round. The second round Izuku would be in would be him versus Shoto Todoroki. As Izuku would be facing off against Todoroki, all of a sudden the round would begin. He would stare towards Todoroki, who would end up sending a massive iceberg right towards him. However, Izuku would put a single hand out, so the iceberg would completely disappear, as a single disc of chaos energy was there, so powerful and hot that it completely burned through the ice. Todoroki would see this completely shocked. No one has ever had just an immunity to his ice before, and he didn't want to use his fire. He would end up looking around now, sort of in a state of not knowing what to do. He couldn't use his ice, as Izuku was just going to use his quirk and burn it all, and he didn't want to use his fire. He didn't want to submit to his father's will. So he would rush towards Izuku, sort of in a last-ditch effort, would go for a punch. However, Izuku would dodge this, smiling. "Come on, Todoroki, you're gonna have to do better than that," would say, jumping backwards. "You know, why don't you want to use your fire? It's not your father's quirk. It's yours," Izuku would say, as Todoroki would all of a sudden get a sudden realization, as fire would burst out from his one side. He would go to use his fire, however Izuku would just flick it away. "It's actually kinda too bad, Todoroki, you got placed up against me. As you see, both your quirks are completely useless," Izuku would say, appearing right behind Todoroki, slashing his neck as the limp body of Todoroki would fall to the ground. "You're just too weak for me right now. I know you'll get better, though," Izuku would say, smiling on towards him, as Todoroki would lie on the floor, just completely unconscious. The semifinals would be Izuku versus Tenya Ida. As Izuku would stare across from the speedster, he would all of this jump towards Izuku with his speed blaring. He would rush, going in for a kick. However, Izuku wouldn't let this happen, blocking it with his elbow, as Ida would the sun have a feel a crack within his foot. He would fall to the ground, holding his foot in pain and agony, yelling, asking Izuku what the hell he did to him. Oh, it's quite simple, really. The force of your kick against my elbow caused your foot to break, pretty much. Well, some of your bones in your leg broke. I'm not quite sure which ones. It's up to you if you wish to continue, but since you're mostly a leg guy, I really wouldn't suggest it. Any more movement from it could possibly pose you to not be able to walk again, Izuku would say with a cold, straight face towards Ida, as Ida would stare on, shocked towards what was usually a happy-go-lucky person in their class, now all of a sudden so serious and quick to the point, saying that Ida should drop out, or else he might not be able to walk again. Such serious words Ida had never expected to hear from Izuku's mouth. So Ida would drop out of the fight, as Izuku would be awarded the victory. With Izuku now victorious, he would end up standing across from his childhood rival, Katsuki Bakugo. With both of them standing across from each other, Izuku would smile, wishing Bakugo good luck as the match would begin. As the match would begin, Izuku would rush right towards Bakugo, punching him across the head before punching him right under the neck bone, or the jawbone area. As Izuku would punch him, Bakugo's jaw would be forced upwards, causing him to look up, as there he saw Chaos Orb spinning right down towards him. As he would make contact with his face, burning off some of the skin there. Bakugo would jump back, holding his pain before shaking the pain off, using his explosions to rush towards Izuku, going to explode in Izuku's face. However, Izuku would dodge this. "Come on, Bakugo, you can't be this weak," Izuku would say, appearing right back behind Bakugo, grabbing him by the neck, putting an arm to his back, holding both of Bakugo's arms, pulling them back before kicking forward. As Bakugo would start screaming out in pain, Izuku would continue to dislocate Bakugo's arms and shoulders. Bakugo would plead with Izuku to stop. However, all of the smoke would appear all around Izuku and Bakugo. Izuku's hair would end up just shifting from green to white over and over again, as his pupils and eyes would shift from green to white as well. Izuku would snap both arms back, dislocating both of them, as he would then appear right in front of Bakugo, who's now on his knees. Izuku would lift Bakugo's jaw up to face him. "You see, Bakugo, we're both very different now," Izuku would say, turning away, losing eye contact with him, looking on towards the crowd that wasn't visible due to the smoke. "You see, I'm far better than you, and you'll never be able to reach me at this level," Izuku would say, before going right back behind Bakugo, slashing his neck, causing Bakugo to go unconscious. As Izuku would fall, just smashing a crater that was the size of his body into the concrete. As of the sun, however, a massive explosion would be heard. Izuku would jump up as the smoke would dissipate. Izuku would look around as there stood All For One, towering over everyone. Izuku's eyes would widen, his hair now back to green and so his pupils. Izuku would stare towards his father, wondering what the hell he was doing. This wasn't a part of the plan. He wasn't supposed to be attacking now. This didn't make any sense, Izuku would think to himself. As all of this sudden, All For One and bunches of Nomus would appear, lining the walls of UA. Izuku would rush towards Bakugo's body, picking it up, before jumping over to the Class 1A section. He would yell, "Come on, we gotta get out of here!" Izuku would yell as all of the class would follow them. Kirishima would stop Izuku, grabbing hold of his hand. "We can't just leave. We're hero students. We can't just leave all of these civilians here." "Well, then help evacuate them. We can't fight those things. You saw what they did at the USJ. You saw what they did to Aizawa? Suki would say, shaking his head. Kirishima would close his eyes as his grip would tighten before letting go. He would clench his fists in anger, looking down to the floor. A tear would drop out of his eye, hitting the ground. Damn it, he would mutter under his breath. The last thing they wanted was to have another thing like the USJ. They didn't want to lose another one of their teachers. They just couldn't. They had gone through the heartbreak of having one of their teachers be killed in front of them. They didn't want to see thousands of civilians now do that, or have that happen to them and their families. Izuku would yell for all of them to start trying to evacuate everyone, as all of his friends would rush around, yelling for people to rush to the emergency exits. Izuku, who was the victor of the UA Sports Festival, would be up there in the front lines, just helping them. As Izuku would end up jumping towards All For One, who was in the middle, for seeing all the Nomus, Izuku would punch All For One right across the face, as All For One would end up holding his cheek. Boy, he would say in a dark voice, what is the meaning of this? What are you doing? We didn't ever have any plans of this. I know. Sometimes you have to just act off schedule. So, I presume you're gonna fake fight me to make it seem like you're not a villain? I guess that has to be done. I'm already right here, Izuku would say, quickly dodging a punch from All For One, leaning backwards or doing a backflip sort of somersault roll kind of thing back. Izuku would get into a stance before rushing towards All For One, dodging a barrage of fists before clocking All For One right in the jaw. All For One would end up laughing, before stretching out his arms for a quick second, looking down towards his son. So be it then, he would say, cracking his knuckles, rushing on towards Izuku. Izuku would continue dodging, however a couple of the punches would land. Some of his classmates would look down towards Izuku, seeing him have all of these punches be landing on and on towards his body. They would yell for him, Izuku! Many of them would say from the stands. However, he couldn't hear them. He was too busy fighting. All of the sudden, however, this body that was just being used as a punching bag would disappear in just a puff of smoke, as there stood Izuku behind All For One, holding him back, or snapping All For One's neck. However, it would instantly regenerate, so All For One would pick him up by his neck before All Might would stand there, grabbing a hold of All For One's hand. That is enough, All For One, All Might would yell, as All For One would look towards All Might with a smile on his face. Oh, All Might, it's a pleasure seeing you here, would say, so All For One would punch him across the face, sending him flying backwards. All For One would get up, cracking his neck. So, let's begin with the fight then, with cracking his knuckles once again, but this time for real, as he really wasn't going hard on Izuku, and Izuku wasn't going hard on All For One either, as Izuku knew deep down that he could kill All For One. However, he had no need to. There really wasn't any reason to even kill him, so what really was the point to it? Both All For One and All Might would continue on their attacks. However, they would both injure each other in the process. So those injuries that they didn't receive, like All For One's respirator he needed after the fight that injured All Might, as well, those injuries would both happen now, meaning All Might would need to look for a successor just far less urgently as well, as he could go 100% up until this injury he gets with All For One in this exact fight. As both of them injured would retreat, as all of the Nomus would be taken care of by Endeavor and a bunch of other heroes. as we end up seeing all of Class 1A standing outside of All Might's just hospital room, many of them clenching their hands, thinking they can't have another Aizawa on their hands. And that is where part 5 of What If Deku Had a Chaos Quirk comes to an end. I hope you all did enjoy this part. Again, I'm so sorry it took so long to come out. I just couldn't really record to the best ability, so to ensure just the fullest quality in my content, I had to take a break. So once again, I'm sorry for that. I hope you all did enjoy this video, and if you did, please consider subscribing. It really does mean a lot to me and helps this channel out so much. And you can even be notified to get the other parts of this series if you click the bell. So I thank you all for watching once again, and goodbye.